FaMniversary 4. A show that absolutely blew my expectations out of the water. I'm not a die-hard fan of FAM, but I've only been around since the Royal Rumble, which kind of soured my opinion of FAM. I felt like the Rumble wasn't as good as my friends who introduced me to FAM claimed that FAM was. But then, FaMniversary redeemed the promotion's reputation and then some for me. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, deckheads of all ages. I am your current UCW Superstar and UCW Universal Champion, the Concussion King, the Leto deck, and I just witnessed a spectacle in not just online wrestling, but wrestling as a community in general. I am a relatively new fan to FAM, having been introduced by my fellow UCW roster members, absolute die-hard fans, DJ Black and Matthew Storm, and I wanted to give my review of this show, and not just for the sake of entering into the review/reaction competition, but for the sake of sharing my opinion on this absolutely wonderful show. This is my official review and breakdown of the show, where I will be giving each segment and match a Dave Meltzer out of 5-star grading. Now, allow me to be a What Culture wannabe for a second and ask you, the fans, FaMniversary 4, what just happened? Starting with the first thing in my notes, we start off the show with a tag team turmoil for the tag team titles. There was the Skilled Foundation, which were the current champions, the Britmen, the Mafia, and the Resurgence. You started with the Resurgence and the Mafia, and you get a really good comedy effect from the Mafia. I really like how they actually played on them, because it's like a little bit of a slapstick humor that you get from WWE, but luckily FAM's able to play on it more and make it actually funny. So I enjoyed the Mafia in the addition in there, and luckily they didn't really go that far. They got eliminated pretty quickly by the Resurgence. Then the Resurgence dominated throughout the match, and it reminded me how fast-paced FAM can be sometimes, which I don't really like how fast-paced it can be, but it worked out for this since it was a tag team turmoil, a little bit of a tournament. They got to get through all the people really quickly. Then it got to the Britmen versus the Resurgence, which I honestly think you probably could have accomplished this if the Resurgence were like already tag team champions, and then you've got the Britmen facing them. But it's all the same. It works out just well that the Britmen and the Resurgence had a really good tag team match. Nice, solid like storytelling with injuring the leg of one of the Resurgence members and stuff like that. And nice to see the Britmen debuting and getting the win and picking up the tag team titles. And it eventually plays on the overarching story, just like any person who wins the championship or any championship in this show. I give this match a good 4 out of 5 stars. Now we get on to one of my favorite matches of the night, was the contract ladder match between Frisco and Darren Dastardly. Fantastic back and forth, very hardcore, and one of my favorite parts of the match was that amazing spot which made both me and Brian the Brain go holy shit when Frisco had Darren Dastardly hanging from the top of the briefcase, and then Dastardly just dropped into a European uppercut by Frisco. That was just, it looked sick. I loved that transition there. And then all the other edited spots and bumps, I can't quite remember all of them perfectly, were done very well, as expected with FAM. And then I wanted Frisco to win, and luckily he did. I really like Frisco and how they built on him. Unfortunately, it kind of sucks that Darren Dastardly is new into FAM, but he's technically gone because he's not allowed after losing that contract ladder match. But, you know, it's understandable when you see later in the night. But, you know, at this moment, I thought it was kind of a little bit disappointing to see Darren Dastardly to go because I liked him as well. And I will give this match a good 4.5 out of 5, as it was one of my favorite matches throughout the night. Now we get on to a triple threat match, and it's Andy Badwell versus Sander versus Killswitch. I really like the students versus teacher thing, but with an interest conflict between the students where eventually Sander and Killswitch kind of turned on each other was a little nice dynamic there that played well throughout the match. A little bit of a problem here, though, is that freaking CM Punk wannabes. Straight Edge Society already happened, but that's a minor complaint. It's a little bit of a joke for me because I call everybody a wannabe. That's my gimmick as a online wrestler. Moving on from that, though, one of my actual complaints is that they kind of overused the GTS. People like Hideo Itami, they break out the GTS occasionally. There was a point where Hideo Itami only used it on pay-per-views, or he only teased it on pay-per-views. But here it was just used just constantly back and forth, and I thought it kind of watered it down, kind of like how in the indie leagues the Canadian Destroyer is kind of a bit overused. Good match nonetheless, and I suspected Andy Badwell to win from the start. He won. Kind of disappointing, though. I kind of wanted either Killswitch or Sander to win. Doesn't really matter that much, though. Nice to see Andy Badwell pick up a win. 3.5 out of 5 for this match. Now we have one of my other favorite matches of the night, was Pandorino versus Roberto in a hardcore title match, with Roberto having the hardcore title getting into this. Very, very nice David versus Goliath dynamic. They played off of this very well, since Pandorino's about half the size of Roberto. It made me want to root for Pandorino, even though I had never seen him before. And a little bit of a side note that I have in my notes right here is that Roberto reminds me of my other Caw, Dead Zone, and you should make that happen. We should have Roberto versus Dead Zone. Not really. Don't do that. Then the overall climax in the match was the Titantron jump, which was, I didn't even think of a way you could edit that, which was really nice how they did that with a little green screen effect, ladder on the scaffolding. It looked nice, and it ended pretty well. Nice way to take out Roberto. Then Pandorino deservingly won through that. And then the amazing part about it that actually made me go a little bit holy shit was Darren Dastardly came out of nowhere and capitalized on the 24/7 hardcore rule and pinned him for the hardcore title, which plays on to the overarching story later in the night, which is nice. This gets a 4 out of 5 for me. Then we get to one of the downsides in this pay-per-view, is that you had an FAM mode with, what was it? It was the Don and somebody else, but it was distracting. I kind of tuned out. It went on for a little bit too long. You could have just done this just as effectively through a backstage segment instead of an SVR wannabe email type of thing. So, just minor detail there. Don't have FAM modes in pay-per-views. Then we get back into the action with the Global Championship match, Element versus Anarchimist, and they kind of treated it as Element was the sole standing YouTuber, which I liked. I liked that little bit story of how Anarchimist is the YouTube killer. And they had a really cool dynamic here that reminded me kind of if someone like Punishment Martinez faced someone like Roman Reigns. That's clearly one of them is bigger, but the smaller guy can easily go toe-to-toe in the bigger guy with power, and it's a nice little dynamic there that shows they are nicely paced, and they're nice and equal, and neither of them will budge against each other, and it's a little bit unsuspecting of who's going to win then. Very nicely paced match, back and forth, as I said, and it's nice to see Anarchimist pick up on the win and get the Global Championship. I give this a nice steady 3.5 out of 5 stars. Now we get into the only match that I just didn't really like at all. Shaw Nova versus Darren for the Cyber Championship. And I thought Darren looked cool, seeing him for the first time, and I know that he wasn't in FAM for that long. He looked cool with his little bear pelt type gear. I wanted to see what he could do in ring, but then they kind of decided to make it a squash match, which, I don't know, that's just not really a thing to do when you don't have weekly episodic shows to show off Darren before you actually just throw him out. I mean, I don't know what reason you did that for, because in UCW we have a situation with people starting drama sometimes, and then we have to end up firing them because they cause us too much stress and booking them, so we have to end up dropping them from the league. But at least we like give them a good send off rather than a straight squash match. So that kind of sucked, and the career stipulation wasn't really welcomed here. I don't know why you guys had that in here. So I guess Darren's gone now, since he was just squashed. He's gone. His reputation's destroyed, and etc. The only redeeming thing that I see in this is Sean Nova getting the title and again playing into the overarching story that climaxes at the end of the night. Nonetheless, I give this match a low 2 out of 5. Now we have the only match that doesn't really have any specific stipulation into the match. It's just a straight one-on-one, which is nice. That's welcomed to see that. It's Guns versus Rafazo. I like Rafazo a lot now. He had a really cool entrance. His gear was nice. I really liked his face paint. His in-ring style is like, it reminds me of what Dean Ambrose wishes he could be in WWE. Guns wasn't so much the focus on this match, but he did well too. He did what he was purposed to do in this match. Rafazo deservedly won, as I see it, and nice to see that happen. Unfortunately, neither of these two really had any play in the overarching story other than Guns getting attacked later in the night. Spoiler alert. I give this a 3 out of 5. Nice, average match. Then we get another FAM mode. Same complaints, just do a backstage segment or an onstage promo or something like that. Just stop with the FAM modes. Now we get into the Women's Diamonds Championship match. And a little side note, marry me, Vikel. Vikel, I love you. Besides Vikel, though, besides my now crush on Vikel, let's move on. It was a great match. I love how even these women are. They had some nice little edits in there. One of them, I think, was a suicide dive where Vikel caught them. Yeah, it was. I think it was Jin who did a suicide dive to the outside, but Vikel ended up catching her into Exploder Suplex. I really liked that edit. Vikel played very well as the dominant Russian dominatrix that she is. Then at the end, they had some sequences and stuff, which I really liked, with Eve taking out Vikel, busting her open, and then Jin hitting the Jin Shasa. I don't really like that name, fucking Shinsuke Nakamura wannabe. But nonetheless, she hit the Jin Sasha, took out Eve, and then deservedly won the title, even though I wanted to see Vikel win everything because she's badass and hot as fuck. Anyhow, the rating for this match is a good 3.5 out of 5. Here's where we're closer to the end of the pay-per-view now. Not really, because each of these matches were like 20 minutes, and it was like an hour overall. But anyway, we have 2 Twisted Merc versus Black Heron in an I Quit match. A little thing about their entrances, very cool Two-Face gear for 2TM. I like that. I wish I could do a cool attire like that, so detailed and everything. Then a great entrance by Black Heron, even though, again, it reminds me of Triple H from, what was it, like WrestleMania 31 or 32, where he had Stephanie introducing him into the match. But it was still badass nonetheless, and Eve's little gold Egyptian attire was hot. Paced amazingly, that match. The in-ring story was told very well with the little personal rivalry between 2TM and Black Heron. I liked the little segments where they had 2TM like nagging Black Heron to quit, otherwise he's going to end up killing him. The introduction of body armor was a bit weird in the match, but I enjoyed it. I like how he did all the moves and then it turned on him when the armor started denting and stuff like that. Then Black Heron, he luckily won. I wanted Black Heron to win since he's turned from a heel to a massive babyface now. Very, very good match. One of my favorite matches. 4.5 out of 5. Now we have a really, really weirdly displaced match. And not that it hurts it too much, Like, it kind of reminds me of how I went to WrestleMania 3, or no, not WrestleMania 3, I'm not that old. I meant WrestleMania 33, and they had the really oddly placed SmackDown Women's match, and that hurt the card majorly because WWE isn't able to pick up from that. But this was very oddly placed. Team Goran Perkins versus Team Kushney in a 7v7 like gauntlet style match, which was interesting way to do that. Good comedy with It's My Yard. I like how once Smack Talks was taken out by who was it again? Oh God, I'm drawing a blank. That hairy guy. We're gonna go with that hairy guy. I completely forgot his name. But then It's My Yard came in for both of the teams, and then they just in tandem laughed at each other and just walked out of the ring and got counted out. I thought that was really funny. Then Grimm came in later in the night, and since Grimm's toy show is amazing, I think he should have just beat everyone and been the sole survivor. Just Roman Reigns the shit out of them. Not really, don't do that. Then for there was a little bit of a cut-in with another FAM mode. Why the FAM mode? You could have just had Tom Kushney on the like center stage with a microphone saying, "Oh, I have Ollie Davis and Luke Owens from Wrestle Talk now." Nonetheless, nice to see Wrestle Talk being featured on there. They're my favorite YouTube channel. And then, deservedly, I think Team Gore and Perkins won. So I'll give that match a nice average, right in the middle, 2.5 out of 5. Then we get into the meat and potatoes of the pay-per-view, the second to last match, the World Championship match, Nick Virtue versus Cameron Bash, not Batch, correcting myself. Nick Virtue is simulation wrestling god. I mean, he even has like a whole handbook on how to simulate in a match. The sequences were plentiful, smooth, and amazing all around. All the edits were nice and put together, nice and smooth. It looks like they were natural in the game, as expected of a Nick Virtue match. Nice little short personal rivalry told throughout the match very well. Reminds me of the same type of dynamic as Element and Artemis, with one person being bigger, but both are so equal. But in this case, it's done better and done in a different way because it's not done through power, it's done through sheer skill in the ring. I kind of wanted to see Nick win the title, but Cameron Bash retaining plays into, again, the overarching story, which blew my mind at the end of the show. So it's forgivable. Nice to see Nick Virtue do a little bit of like an emotional, like crying moment at the end of the match. Giving this a perfect 5 out of 5 stars for this match. Now it's main event time. Career versus company ownership, and I said that they kind of like overused the career stipulation, but here it works rather than it was for Sean Nova versus Darren. But nonetheless, it's Rom Buster versus Rannick, brother versus brother, with brother commentating their match. Rom's entrance was weird but badass with the lion and then the lightning effect turning him into, Rom Buster with the weird green screen jacket that was lightning. I thought that was a really, really cool and badass entrance. Then Rannick's entrance never ceases to give a final boss feel to him. He just feels like no one can beat him, and Rom Buster's like, player number one trying to beat him. The start of the match was an instant holy shit moment, just a quick back and forth, and then just Rannick just tossing him like a lawn dart into the announce table. The rest of the match was absolutely amazing. A little bit of a minor complaint about the GTS overusage, but moving on from that, the dynamic of brother versus brother played to perfection, and Rom being the absolute underdog and nearly dying at the hands of Rannick was great. And Romero playing into it about how he was just shocked that he was seeing his own brother nearly kill his other brother, and, considering they're all like twins and stuff like that. Rom had an emotional, exhausting victory that made me feel emotionally driven and depleted after, but in a good way, like the same way that you would feel after like Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair's match. And that's so weird and bizarre to get that from an online wrestling league, that you guys have edited it to such perfection that it feels like an actual real life, star-stunning, show-stopping match, main event quality. And of course, how could I not give this the coveted 6 out of 5 stars match? But wait, there's still one more thing at the end of the show. Which the thing at the end of the show was that thing that I kept referencing to, the overarching story with AWOL. So at the end of the match, you had Rannick showing a nice little side of humanity as he watched Ron Buster being stretchered out because he had such a grueling match and, Rannick nearly killed his own brother. And then it just cut to this all of a sudden just holy shit moment of static on the Titantron, and then just showing all these people getting beaten up by all these other people, which made it seem at that instant moment that you guys had, you had double turned the entire roster, which is unheard of, that you turned all the faces into heels and all the heels into instant faces because they were being attacked for seemingly no reason, until at the end of it, where Death's Angel returned, and then an Artemis came in, and then just this insane moment where Cameron Bash came out of nowhere, pedigreed Rannick, and it just showed this nice little transition that FAM is always in this constant little civil war, that in storytelling, they're always split down the middle. They are always separated in this little battle with, in the beginning it started with Rannick's minions versus everyone, and now it's transitioned into the takeover of AWOL versus everyone. And then just it all culminated in my mind and in everybody else's mind. It was just an absolute mindfuck of a moment when Cameron Bash started explaining how everything worked with NGC and how it fell, and then how he felt screwed over, and then over the plan of 4 years he started gathering people. That's just attention to continuity and detail unheard of with any league. WWE fails in comparison to this, and to this just godly storytelling mechanism. Cameron Bash and Ron Buster are just storytelling gods, and WWE should hire them. Overall, in this show rating, especially supplemented by this specific match, I'm giving this a solid 9.5 out of 10. This show, as stated before, was an absolutely thrilling and wonderful showcase of what FAM can do. I've gone to WrestleMania 33. This trumped that experience. I went to Supercard of Honor 11, and this trumped the wrestling and storytelling quality, even when Supercard of Honor was a through-and-through amazing pay-per-view to go to. The ending to this show was far superior than to any ending I've ever seen in any wrestling show. I was watching the show with UCW owner Brian the Brain, and I ended it with the remark that if you ask me what my favorite movie is, my response won't even be a movie. It'll be FaMniversary 4. FaMniversary made me want to invest more into watching FAM. I so want to see how this storyline unfolds, the formation of AWOL, and I just can't wait for the return of FAM so I could see what happens from here on. If you haven't watched this show, I encourage you to take 5 hours and 40 minutes out of your day to sit down and seriously pay attention and watch this show. Thank you for listening to my review. Hope you enjoyed it. This has been your quadruple crown Concussion King, the Leto deck. Thank you, my deckheads. Peace out.